am David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And it's a Thursday, and I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going, Bill?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we've gotten through a little bit of the cold spell. It's still 13 degrees in Omaha, but
Yeah,
that's
cold,
at least it doesn't have a dash in front of it like it did a few days ago. I was like,
yeah.
why does the temperature have a dash in front of it?
Yeah.
And it's funny. We got snow last night, and it was just, it's not enough to even worry about walking over it. It's so slight. It's
Just a
just so
dusting. Yeah. Just a
Yeah, it's
dusting.
hard to believe that like New Orleans got 9 inches of snow, and
I know.
we
Amazing.
haven't. Yeah, Bill.
Snowball fights on Bourbon Street. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it's just so hard to fathom that we keep getting missed by every snow this year. I was out last night though. I saw at least 5 snowplows, running around spraying the roads and all that. Yeah, they were out in force. I think they thought we were going to get a
More,
real
huh?
snowstorm last night, maybe.
No, it didn't happen.
And yeah, it sure didn't happen. I mean, it's really shocking that we had nothing. Anyways, let's start out today. Let's talk about Hyundai. So Hyundai is a company that's done kind of well in the EV space so
Mhm.
far. They aren't losing money on their cars, which is a really big plus. They're one of the, profitable EV manufacturers. Unlike Ford and GM, they have figured out how to make them and make money on them, and that is a thing. But so for 2025 models, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 9 lose the $7,500 tax credit. And part of this is because the way the tax credit rules were written, a larger percentage of the battery components have to be made in the US or US friendly treaty countries than they were last year. So and so this is changing some of them. So 2 of the Hyundais are going the way. However, there's still a workaround, and the workaround is, of course, leasing. Now, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 can be leased for as little as $199 a month. I mean, that is
Oh,
just nuts. Some of the
that's
deals
nuts.
they're doing on that. I mean, that is really a cheap car. You're thinking about you're getting a car under warranty. All you do not, and if you're charging at home, you have greatly reduced vehicle expense. You still got insurance. But I used to figure, the nationwide average cost per month for driving a car is like $1,050. Okay, but you take this $200 lease. Now you're going to have some origination costs and stuff in that lease, so that probably really is adding another $100 to that.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so you take $300, $100 for insurance. You're maybe spending $30 a month on electricity at most if you're charging it at home. I mean, in reality, that's a third of the average operating cost of a vehicle in the United States. That's truly still a bargain. But one of the things that the whole leasing aspect has been a loophole that lets a lot of people who aren't eligible for the normal $7,500 purchase tax credit skirt the rules. Okay,
Yeah.
if there was anything I could see something being done about, that would be it, because obviously you're skirting the rules here to get around the battery requirements, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and the battery requirements are a good thing. We need that manufacturing. Hyundai is got a plant that's supposed to open in the US later this year to make their batteries.
Which will solve
And when
that
that
problem
happens,
then. Yeah.
yeah, as long as something crazy doesn't happen. But
Yeah.
Hyundai set US retail sales records last year in its 4th straight, expected 2025 to be an even bigger year. The Ioniq 9 is a new model, and they're increasing production at their Hyundai plant in Georgia. But that it's just odd that they have these vehicles that are getting hurt there. Now, the upgraded 2025 and the 3-row Ioniq 9 were named among 25 EVs that qualified for the credit in early January. However, that was just updated by the Department of Energy, and Hyundai no longer has eligible EV models. The only Hyundai Motor Group, which includes Kia and Genesis cars, are eligible are the Kia EV6 and the Kia EV9. Hyundai's luxury brand Genesis lost its eligibility as well. Now,
those are
they
assembled. Those are assembled here in the U.S., but so the battery
they were
components
they built them in Georgia, and the question here has to do with the battery components, and that's going to change here shortly. But I don't have a date on it. But it's saying with the leases starting at $199 a month, the Ioniq 5 is cheaper than the Toyota RAV4. So it's really become an affordable vehicle. The Ioniq 5 was the 4th top selling EV in the US last year.
I actually saw one yesterday here in Omaha coming back from the dentist. So
yeah, I've seen Ioniq 5s, Ioniq 6s, stuff like that here in the US. The 5, depending on the model, can have a range up to about 318 miles. They vary anywhere, depending on the model, from 245 to 318 miles range. Let's see. They vary anywhere, depending on the model, from 168 horsepower all the way to 320. So they're not, as, fast as a lot of other EVs, but still, for the model, it's a pretty decent item.
Like the Cadillac, the new Cadillac Lyriq with what, over 600 horsepower?
Right. Yeah, the Lyriq's an interesting thing to see. So the Lyriq was listed as the first or second best-selling mid-size luxury EV in the United States. What's I found fascinating is when I went to the Cadillac website, I'm going to show you something when it pops up right in the middle of the screen here. So here's the 2025 Lyriq, the best-selling luxury EV in Nebraska, which I thought that was interesting. I don't know what they're comparing to, but
well, let's see. They apparently don't consider the Tesla's luxury vehicles now.
Probably. Well, you think about it. The Lyriq starts at about 66,000. The
new one's like 79 or something, isn't it?
They can be, depending on the trim. It says here on the screen, it says the sport model's 73,510. I mean, obviously they're nice looking vehicles. I've seen a bunch of them. You see a lot of them around Omaha, though. Cadillac's done a good job selling those in our market, but it's so like the Model Y is about 46,000, and when you take the 75, or maybe that's after the tax credit, but it's really inexpensive after you take the tax credit on the Model Y. So it's hard to compete with. We were talking yesterday about the Volvo EX30 hitting the US, but they were starting out at about 45,000, or like $10,000 more than they were supposed to be. So something happened there on the price of the one, but the Lyriq's obviously a very nice looking vehicle. Looking at a review of it, has a 33-inch screen. It's a crazy big screen. That sounds like the original, kind of like the original Tesla Model X from like 2017 had this enormous screen. Yeah, let me see.
I mean, this particular video you're looping here doesn't show it, so.
No, let me see if I can see what it gives me here.
Just watching this, I can smell the leather.
Yes.
The new car smell.
I guess we're just talking about the screen, here, from here to here.
Oh, okay.
So it stretches all the way across the dash. So instead of being an up and down one,
flat panel, yeah.
No, it's not quite the same. But It does really just look like a normal car. It doesn't look unusual.
So here's the question: how long? I know that Warren Buffett, resident here in town, likes Cadillacs, and that's typically the kind of car that he buys. I wonder how long it'll be before the local Cadillac dealer, makes him an offer he can't refuse. That would be kind of interesting. But then
It would
again,
be.
he's making a lot of money off of BYD, who's just killing it in the global car market. So does he want to drive a Cadillac when he has all those shares of BYD? So I don't know.
You never do know. That'd be kind of funny if you saw him all of a sudden driving a BYD here in Omaha.
Well, he can't unless it's a Bosch.
Yes.
Oh, I
Well, you
guess
never know.
he could get an exemption. That happens.
Do you think he could afford to pay the tariff?
Pay the tariff?
Do you think Warren could afford to pay the tariff on a
Oh,
BYD?
he could, yeah, he could probably pay the tariff, I would think. Yeah, yeah. He's got what? He's got what, 230 some billion dollars in cash that he can invest? I mean,
Yeah,
it's just
it's nuts. I'm tempted to go over to their office and just see what that looks like. I'm sure just sitting around there in the room, right?
there's a room full of dollar bills, right?
Right. Yeah. Just the whole building. What is it? 9 people or something like that work over there. I mean, it's
Oh
not
yeah,
like it's
yeah.
a real big office.
No. What's that? It's down where Mutual of Omaha is located, right?
One of my friends is the director of like shopping center development for Berkshire Hathaway, and I don't think he classifies as one of the 9 though. So yeah, he works independently,
Yeah.
but
Oh yeah. He
still.
probably works from home or wherever his jet can take him.
Well, he's a descendant of the famous furniture store family. So,
Who we talking?
anyways,
Not Warren. Who are we talking about?
okay, so we have a big furniture store over on 72nd.
Right. And he bought it, or Berkshire bought it.
Yeah, well, Berkshire owns 51%.
Yeah.
The Blumkin family
Right.
still owns
Yeah.
a big chunk of it, and I know lots of people in that family.
I used to work on a project, for a very brief time with one of the Blumpkins, and of course, Mom Rose. She was
Mhm.
always around. You could meet her when you went down to the store when she was alive. So, yeah.
Nice. Nice. All right. Let's talk about China made a bet decades ago because it couldn't compete with the US on cars. And that bet is paying off big. Now, they're the world's largest car market now,
Hmm.
and they keep increasing the percentage of new car sales there. But so the story starts off talking about the streets of Beijing have changed dramatically within just a few years. The noisy, smelly thrum of traffic has been replaced by an unusual quiet for a megacity. Roads course with a stream of mostly electric vehicles,
I
all with their
love it.
distinct green license plates. Not just a Beijing phenomenon. For those arriving in many of China's major cities from countries dominated by gas guzzlers, the quiet will be their first impression. It's like stepping into the future. By any measure, China's EV growth has been extraordinary. More than half of new cars sold are electric, putting the world's largest automaker on a path to all but erase gas-powered cars over the coming decades. Last year, China's EV sales soared to 11 million units, a 40% increase on 2023. When you think about that, what's the US like 1.3 million? So
Yeah,
they're like
something.
9 to
Yeah.
10x
Oh yeah.
where we are.
Yeah.
A nearly 40% increase from 2023. China accounted for 60% of global EV sales of cars, global EV car
Well,
sales.
I would like to take credit for that,
There you go.
because when I was in Beijing in 2002, that was the last time I was there. I was there in '98, when they had their very first electric vehicle symposium. And then I
Mhm.
was invited back 4 years later in 2002 to a company that was a new startup building large format lithium ion batteries. And during that, my host during that arranged for me to be on Chinese national television. This is the this is I guess would be the equivalent of one of the major, well, the only network, right? On one of their popular talk shows. And they were talking, that was the whole show was about electric vehicles and what America's role would be and things like that. But it was pretty obvious that they had determined that they were going to be aggressive in pursuing this electric vehicle market. In fact, when I went into I guess he would be maybe the chief operations officer. When I went to his office, he flips his laptop around and shows me there on his laptop was my website. Of course, he was doing that obvious for make me feel good, but it was nice to see that. So yeah, 2002 things really began to start to roll. They were just beginning to roll out electric buses at that point. They were trying to get ready for the Beijing Olympics, and they wanted those buses to be electric. And I got to take a tour of that plant, which incidentally was located on a Chinese military base. It was like driving into Offutt Air Base over here, where you go through the gate, and you got the guards and things. It was like that going on to this base, and that's where they were manufacturing these buses.
Huh. But that's interesting. That would be the location for something like that.
Well,
Makes you wonder
we know that very early Chinese, they've always had. There's been a role of the government and particularly the military in a lot of this
industries.
Technology. Yeah.
Yeah. So this graph is interesting to see. So sales of electric vehicles in 2024, China in red, Europe in blue, and the US and Canada in mustard. I don't know what color to call that. It's not really yellow. Anyways, but it's a huge difference. And the rest of the world is this gray at 1.26 million units. I find this year-on-year growth in sales fascinating. China grew 36%. The rest of the world grew 26%. The US and Canada only 8.8%. And Europe was only 0.7. Now, I know that Germany was the first country to actually have their sales go down.
Yeah.
Germany was the first country to ever have EV sales go down. But you've also got a bunch of the Scandinavian companies, their adoption is so high, there's not really much room for them to go up anymore, right? So they're kind of stuck. They can't really have growth because they pretty much maxed out at 100%.
Yeah, 96 or whatever it is percent in Norway. It's like,
yeah.
That's new car sales. So I don't know where we at in terms of the rollover, where those gas cars, diesels are being replaced by, by electrics. Are they? I mean, what will that'll be interesting to know what that crossover point is, where the majority of the vehicles now would be that's new cars. The majority are electric, but what about the overall fleet in the country?
So the US is a net exporter of energy. Okay, we produce more energy than we need for internal. China is the opposite. China was built on imported oil. The reliance on other countries is a potential geopolitical liability. And so the EVs are an advantage for them that can be powered off of China's plentiful supplies of homegrown electricity. Man, their electricity generation is just incredible. Mike and I were just discussing yesterday how many gigawatts. It was an absurd amount of power China is able to generate from all of their sources.
Yeah, I just posted a link this morning that for the second year in a row, China has installed a record amount of renewable energy, wind and solar, 2 years in a row now.
Yeah, for being the world's largest polluter and carbon emitter, they are trying to do something about it.
They're trying to do something about it. Yep.
They have more reasons than we do. So, this whole thing about being energy reliant on other countries, is a huge issue for them.
Sure.
And, I've talked about this with some politicians in the past of some smaller countries that, they could use solar farms to create an energy independence from their neighbors. And some of these countries in the third world are always in danger of having, small level conflicts over different things. And if they had a conflict with their energy providing country, that's a problem. The one thing that's kind of fascinating about this whole Ukraine-Russia fight is how there's Russian, energy being piped through Ukraine to Europe
Not
during this.
anymore.
Oh, is
They,
that done with finally?
they turned off the spigot. Yep, they're not piping any more energy, allowing any more energy on the gas. Gas. And I don't know if it's the oil pipeline, but at least the gas line pipeline. They cut that off.
The Ukraine did?
Yep.
No,
Yeah,
it's
they did
interesting. They've been at war for
like
3 years.
just last month they did that.
Yeah, after almost 3 years of conflict, it's strange to allow some of that. I mean, some of that.
Well, this was the point that the government was making. Why are we helping? Because the sales of that gas to Europe is what's keeping Putin's army afloat, right? And
Yeah.
economy. So let's stop, of course, that's revenue that they're turning off to themselves because the Russians were supposedly paying them, right, to
Hmm.
take and let that gas transmit through that pipeline. And they said, nah, you're using that money to kill us. You're not going to, we're not going to let that happen anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange dichotomy to see
Yeah.
that going on.
Yeah.
But China's been introducing EV friendly policies in earnest starting in around 2009.
Mhm.
And it's making a big difference. I mean, I'm sure it'll make a big difference in the amount of smog and other things. It's just, and it's not just cars. They're making high-speed rail. They're okay. So for all of that, their gasoline demand fell only 1%. And for a country of China's economic profile, just the fact that it's going down is a big deal. Their imports fell 2% in 24. Still, it doesn't sound like a lot. You and I've talked about this, how I've been to conferences with companies in the oil space, and they're talking about global oil demand is still going up, even though,
Yeah.
The demand for EVs is because there's simply more demand. People are driving more, there's more cars on the road and all that. The International Energy Agency predicts China's oil demand will be declining by the 2030s. Well, it's already declining a little bit. It's really interesting how China keeps setting these targets and they keep hitting them early, which is
Yeah.
really quite
Yeah.
fascinating
I
to
think one
see
target, they're
a
like 10
country doing
years
that.
ahead of, I think one of the targets are like 10 years ahead of where they were predicting to be.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
All right. I want to talk about this UK charging company, PodPoint. Now, they're not going out of business. It's just they lost a third of their market value, and they're blaming it on the weakness in electric car sales. Now, electric car sales didn't go down in the UK, but the thing you and I were talking about is I think people have this expectation that they need all this infrastructure to charge cars, and in reality, most EV owners charge their car at home. So
Mhm.
they don't go to infrastructure. And so this is a problem in that while you need that infrastructure there for travel, it's the average person just isn't using it that much.
Yeah.
And I think there's bigger expectations on how much people should be charging. Now, to put this in perspective, though, their expected revenues for 2024 were supposed to be 60 million expected, 60 million pounds, 60 million
Right.
pounds expected. It was
Exactly.
53 million pounds. So they still did 53 million pounds in EV charging for
Yeah.
2024. I doubt that was, I have a hard time fathoming if that would have been profitable, just because I just don't see that space. I don't know. Eventually, if you have enough units installed, it's got to start producing some kind of return, right? And I think it's just a really tough challenge because it's not like gas stations where. So what's happening is you go to these EV charging companies that are putting EV chargers in places that aren't gas stations. They're,
Right.
so to
They
me,
don't, they don't, they don't have Slurpees to sell and nachos and Doritos and things to sell to make up. You go to a charging station, and if you locate a business, if you put in a supercharger station like here in the Omaha Council Bluffs area, over behind the wall, was it the Walmart or something in Council Bluffs?
Mhm.
You put it there. You walk into Walmart and buy. You're not passing any of that revenue on to Tesla, right?
No,
You, you're just Tesla's using that as an attraction and a convenience for their people. Whereas a gas station, you've got a Buddies or a Cubbies or whatever. You're going to go in there and you're going to buy a Slurpee or you're going to buy a Snickers bar or you're going to, I don't know, buy a pack of cigarettes or something. And that's revenue that's going into the operator's pocket. So it's a different model. And I guess, what Elon has set up that diner out in the LA area. And maybe that's his thing is you pull into this diner and you charge your car and I get some revenue from that because you come in and buy vegan burgers from me or something. I don't know.
musky burgers.
Muskie burger, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, so there's a couple things. If I were a gas station owner, there's a couple of issues. One, those places that are shopping for convenience, but at the same time, you've got all these people that are coming in to buy gas, right? So you've also got other stores like CVS and Walgreens, which kind of are shopping by convenience, right?
Right,
Because it's a smaller than a Walmart or a Target. You can get in
right.
there and get out pretty fast. So they're kind of a convenience store in a sense too that doesn't sell gas, but they're
Oh
nicer,
yeah,
right? But they don't they still sell drinks and some food, but they don't necessarily sell like pizzas and some other stuff that's
no,
pre-cooked.
no,
Like
yeah,
because like here, the gas you go into Quick Trip or Casey's or Come and Go, they all have extensive kitchens and food
yep,
choices, and some of them even have prepared salads and
yeah. Well,
healthy choices and stuff like that
right.
for you to buy.
Casey's. The only thing you see them advertising for Casey's, generally speaking, is what? Their
Pizza.
pizza. It's a
Yeah.
gas station,
Quick
right?
Trip does it too, though. Quick Trip.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, Quick Trip has outdoor seating for you to eat.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a very different experience. Quick Trip seems to me like it would be an obvious place to have charging stations, right? Because they want you to spend some time there. But a
Yeah.
lot of the other convenience stores, if you go to them, they're really limited in their parking spots. Okay. They really don't need you to stay more than 5 minutes. They need you to turn over and go
Right.
somewhere else so that somebody else can come in and buy their lottery tickets.
Yeah.
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 You know,
Hey, why don't we set up, when you go in and there you go.
sure.
There's an idea. You plug in your car and you have a choice. Do you want a lottery ticket? And the charger prints out a lottery ticket for you.
There you go. I have a funny feeling that most EV owners aren't lottery ticket buyers.
Probably not.
Yeah, I think it's the wrong demographic,
Yeah.
and it's really kind of funny to say that, but it's just different. I,
Now
I
look,
remember.
I've owned an EV since 2019. Okay.
Mhm.
All prior to that, I always had hybrids. I bet I can count on one hand the times I have used a public charger.
Yeah,
In what,
just
4 years now? 5 years? The times I have used 6 years, almost to be the spring, 6 years. On one hand, I can count the number of times because I don't,
was at least one of those times just to say you did it.
Actually, yes. There was I had a meet. There was a meeting that was being held in Ashland, Nebraska. Right, just down the street is our a set of public EV chargers, level 2 chargers. So I'll pull in there and I'll charge my car up and I'll go to the meeting. Right. So yeah,
Yep.
it was only because, like I said, I'll do it just so I can say I did it.
Nice, nice. All right. So I got a kind of an interesting one. This one comes from California. California wildfire first responders say Tesla Cybertrucks have been
Yeah,
vital in an unexpected way. Now, the thought is, you think about them as an off-road vehicle, as the Cybertruck and all that, but in reality, it hasn't been just using them as transportation. Now, Tesla simply loaned these
yeah,
vehicles to the
right,
first responders while they're fighting. But what's happened is, because of all the damage, there's no electricity running into these places. So they've been using the Cybertrucks to charge everything.
right.
So because the Cybertrucks have these big batteries on them and they have features on them so you can use them as a portable generator for your other projects. And that's where they've been using them.
Yep.
They've really been life-saving because they've run out of ways to power their equipment. And, I guess they haven't had as much access to gas generators and things like that. And so the Cybertruck being able to go to a site where they can use that to power their
Do we
tools
know?
has been invaluable.
Yeah, I assume was some type of saws for cutting up brush, and I would imagine for radios and
Yeah, they're saying
telephones and things of that.
radios, computers, and lights as we
Yeah,
work into the dark.
yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, and stuff you just wouldn't think. So the trucks have been vital in keeping things running. The Altadena Mountain Rescue Team has been extensively been using them. They're vital in providing necessary power to our HQ and command post. Let's see. A Tesla Model Y owner said his EV literally saved his life thanks to the bioweapon defense mode. It's come in
Sure.
handy for the Palisade fires. It's
Yeah,
literally saving my life. Never buying another brand again.
yeah. Who? When they brought that out, that filter system, I thought, what are you going to need that for, right? Biofilter? When are we going to have a chemical war? And here we are in 2025, because that smoke is not only is that smoke just from the burning of the wood and things like that, but all of the toxic chemicals, all of the
Mhm.
plastics and things that are going up in the process, right? That and having that car, I could, yeah, that is proving
It's really
valuable.
interesting to think about. I suspect when they were designing that feature, it probably was a point where we're putting this spec, and they probably came to, like, for another couple dollars, we can make it this spec where it qualifies for this. So let's go ahead
Right.
and let's add that as a feature, because it really wasn't super complex to do because of the technology we already had going.
Yeah.
And so it made that quite interesting to see that happen. I got a couple more things here. So Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid shares fall as Trump kicks off his anti-EV agenda. Now, what's interesting is when Trump got elected, Tesla skyrocketed. Okay.
Hmm.
And so now after the inauguration, Detroit automakers shares are rising, and the full electric rivals saw their stocks fall as Donald Trump begins tearing into his predecessor's pro EV moves. Now, I don't see, he talked about getting rid of the EV mandate, terminating some state emissions rules that limit the sale of gas powered cars, and consider eliminating any subsidies for EVs. Now, one of the things I have this bias where I assume everybody else kind of thinks like I do. We all kind of assume that the way we think is what should be normal, right? And that's kind of why people get so divided about political opinion, right? Because people don't realize that everybody else thinks differently than they do. Okay. But one of the things is, who wants to breathe fuel fumes? Okay. If there's a way to get rid of that, like the Chinese are talking about, or they're getting rid of noise and fumes and all that, doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it make sense to pay less to power your car? Just
Yeah.
simple things. I mean, if you have a more fuel efficient car, it's going to have less emissions, right?
Yep.
And whether it's a gas car that gets 60 miles per gallon, like, well, of course, the Prius is a hybrid, but you have a number of hybrids. Even we talk about this, the Toyota Camry hybrid gets like 44 city and highway now. I mean, 20 years ago, that same Camry got about 20 probably on the highway. And it's amazing to see some of these changes. I really think that market forces are at a point where they're going to change some things. I'd like to think that the people who mostly drive big full-size pickup trucks do it because they have a legitimate need for it, but we know that that's not completely true, right, Bill? There's a
No.
lot of people who just drive it because they think they're cool and it's manly or whatever. But when you get to start, when you see somebody driving like an F-250, you know super super duty cab with
Du-
extra long bed and the diesel and the extra,
Dually, yeah.
yeah, and the fuel tank in the back of the vehicle to hold extra fuel. That those people probably have some kind of legit use,
Yeah.
you know for having all of that. They're taking tools
Some,
off remotely or something.
yeah, summertime they're hauling ditch witches and front, the little front loaders and that. And then the wintertime they're pushing snow with the snow plow on the front. So I can see
Yeah.
that. That's legitimate.
So Trump also directed agencies to stop handing out funds tied to the IRA and the investment and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Acts, which provided funding for EVs and other clean energy infrastructure. More than $82.5 billion has been allocated to 164 EV-related projects, creating 63,659 jobs just through the IRA, according to E2's investment tracker. The president is expected to scrap the $7,500 tax credit, but nobody really knows when that might happen. Now, in all fairness, this article talked about all three of them dropping. Rivian dropped like 2.6%, Lucid just under 1%, Tesla just under 1%. You know, none of those are really like earth-shattering changes, but still, it's interesting to see how some of this plays out. I think you've got a situation now where most of these EV companies like Rivian, Lucid, and obviously Tesla are going to make it. They're going to be successful. I mean, Tesla is going to continue to be successful. You just can't see any reason why they won't be. But Rivian just needs to get over a couple of humps yet, and they're headed there. And they have so many pre-orders for their stuff coming to market. I'm sure it'll be pretty good. Now, we had this one article, it'll be our last article for today. It says, why I'm convinced EVs will outlast Trump's attacks. And I guess, like I'm saying, I just don't see where,
No,
we're starting to get to a point where the incentives from the government don't matter as much.
well, yeah,
You look at California. You look at California where they're already at past 25%, and you've got several other states just right on their heels. I mean, I just don't see it. I think once again, it goes back to that neighbor effect. As your neighbors
no,
get an EV, you get one too.
yeah, there's that. You get people, once you get in one, you don't want to go back. That's pretty well the message you hear from 90+% of the people that that buy electric. And then you have just simply the momentum that was built in the 4 years, right, of the Biden administration, where you've got investments in all these battery plants. You got all car companies that are doing the conversion over. You're seeing more and more advertising for electrics that are out there. I think there's been enough of a snowball built that as it rolls down this hill, it's just going to gain momentum in spite of the policy, the narrow regressive policies, short-sighted policies, because everybody recognizes. There's a story posted today. everybody recognizes that if the U.S. gives up on this market, EVs are not going away. It only opens the door for the Chinese.
Right.
Plain and simple. That's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we see how much the cost of cars is going down when they're EVs. And I think part of it, like we were talking about that Volvo EX30, I'm kind of curious if the reason they're charging $10,000 more than they originally said is just so they can make more, because they sold over 100,000 in Europe last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so it's interesting to see what could be going on there.
Yeah, I think there's an article that you can find on our RS stream that I just posted just before we came on the air that shows how the price gap between gasoline cars and electric models all across the board, from Europe, China, the United States, are all that gap is narrowing. I think there's a figure in there, something like 40% decline in the gap, not in obviously the price, but in the gap between the two has declined by like 40%. So they're coming down to becoming affordable, and this has started. It may take a little longer to roll out because of the barriers that are obstacles being thrown up, but it's gonna happen. There is going to be an EV world, folks. That's just the way it's going to be, because I said so.
There you go. There you go, Bill. Yeah, I didn't know this. This one thing, this one article was saying transportation is the USA's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas in some other countries, it's manufacturing. And
right,
here in the US,
we send all our manufacturing to China.
Right. We send it all to China and India. Yeah. Yeah. And they're doing a pretty good job of trying to fight on that. Mercedes-Benz is developing charging networks that only use renewable energy.
Good for them.
Yes, 100% renewable energy. Let's see. But, it's interesting to see where we're at and where things are going.
Should we mention our guest before we log off here? Our guest for next week?
Oh yeah, I suppose we should.
Yes.
Yeah. So for Tuesday, we have a real treat. We have Jigar Shah, the head of the Department of Energy Loan Program Office, has a massive following. He's followed by like 750,000 people alone on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, that's just nuts.
Yeah.
How many people follow. I mean, I subscribe to a newsletter he has that has almost 200,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So he.
Oh, that's exciting. That's he's a longtime acquaintance and friend of mine. As I was mentioning on the air, I'm probably one of the few people that slept on his New York apartment futon. The day Time Magazine announced that Goldman Sachs had given him, I forget what it was, $500 million or some number like that, to start Sun Edison, the solar energy company. So, yeah.
Nice.
So delighted that he's agreed to be here with us on EV World. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, Bill, I will see you again on Tuesday with Jigar.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Folks, thanks for watching.